Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm back with the Stats Show, covering global stats from July 2023 all the way to January 2024. But please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Happy to have the stats back. Do you like the stats? Do you like them much as I have them back? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, an affiliate link at Element Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But yeah, let's get on with today's video. First things first though, it's been a while with the stats. It's literally been 7 months, actually maybe even 8. It's been a long time. But before we go on with the stats, I have to thank a very special person. So this is obviously HotSauceTeddy. So as you know, he was covering the stats. He started doing it first, then he came to me about doing it, and then we worked on it together. You know, we had other people doing stats, kinda, but he was the big driving force. He made it clear and publicly available and helped me deliver stats to you. And if it wasn't for him, you know, wouldn't be here doing this today. So we have to thank him. He doesn't want to come back to do them, understandably, due to a multitude of reasons, but I just wanted to thank him because, as always, you know, I always thanked him and he did a great job for the community. And yeah, you know, it's a shame he hasn't come back to do them, but I will always appreciate his help and love he had for the game, as well as just helping me. So I had to thank him first. But yes, these are the stats. I have all the stats again. You know, some people tried to do the stats, you know, whether it wasn't too clear or just kind of like, but I'm back. I have all the stats. And instead of just doing the January stats, maybe the December stats, I was like, no, I stopped in June 2023. Let's cover all of that. So I literally have all the data covering July 2023 up until the end of January 2024. Because this is going to be such a big coverage of data, we are not going to cover compendium stats, even though I do have compendium stats. It's just because there's so much. There's way too much information. When I go back to doing it monthly, you know, going like singular months, we'll focus on compendium again. It's just literally because I have to do like 7 months of data. It's way too much. I'm so sorry, compendium people. You're not being forgotten. It's just for this video, okay? Don't worry, we're back with that. But first, I need to thank my new stat man, who is Smiles, Lies, Gunfire. He's done an amazing job. Once again, we have all the data, but this time we've managed to get podium data, as well as a few more things. So it's going to be, it's our first rodeo back, but hopefully it should be nice and clear. So not only do we have win rate, we have how well, you know, like how popular a faction is, but we also have how well a faction is podiuming, which is getting first, second, or third at an event. Once, you know, we refine it a bit more, we'll be able to go like, you know, we have undefeated as well, but we'll be able to add like, you know, who won events the most, that kind of stuff. But we're looking to refine it to make it more granular. This is just our first foray back. And obviously I have an article version of this in the episode description below, which is going to be a little more brief, but we'll have all the images if you want them. So let's get on with it, starting with July 2023. So first up for July, we had 60 events in total with 21 large events, and large events are basically GT+. So they're players with 16 over their events with 16 or more players and 4 or more rounds. And as you'll see with a growing trend with this kind of thing, America is the most popular place in the world for kill team events, which is a new thing. We saw America catching up when I was ending the stats, and as you'll see, America is now the most popular place to play kill team. You will see some other countries going down to numerous zeros, but that's because when we do quarterly reviews, you see more stats. So for overall results for July, remember 55% to 45% is good. That is the healthy range we are considering, because that, you know, gives away for a region of error. So if you're above 55%, that's not good. If you're above 60%, that's insane. And if you're below 45%, that's also not good. But if you're below 40%, that's really bad as well. So looking at bespoke teams only, this is all events. Above 55%, we have Chaos Cults. You know, not surprising, with 144 games. Then you have Blooded with 53. Hand of the Archon, you know, doing quite well with 73 games. Orc Commandos with 59%, which is ridiculous considering how, like, the second most popular faction in the game now. Warp Coven, only with 62 games. Inquisitorial Agents with 89. And those are all the overperforming factions. And then underperforming, you have still quite a lot. So you have Halfkin, Exaction Squad, Vet Guard, Farstalker Kinban, Novitiates, Imperial Navy Breaches, Hunterclade, and Hierotech Circle. So remember, this was still about the weird era of the game, just before like the emergency nerf to cults and stuff, but still not in a great spot. And this is just breaking down all the numbers in bar chart form, because bar charts are superior to pie charts, because it's literally harder to like interpret pie charts. Pie charts are bad. And remember, blue is the win percentage and red line is the popularity. So it shows how popular a faction is. So as you can see, Intercession and Commandos are the most popular, but generally we've got a quite even spread for bespoke teams. And then this is just our podium data for July overall. As you can see, red is undefeated, blue is podium, so 1 to 3rd, first place to third place. Commandos, you can see they had 12 undefeated players. The closest faction had 5, which was Hand of the Archon. So you can see how it's a bit more swingy when you convert win rate data into podium data, but it does show that like Commandos and Chaos Cult were quite ridiculous. Now this is our GT Plus results, so you know our large events. So oddly, Warp Coven are from 28 games, not too impressive. Chaos Cult's quite concerning, but this was before they got nerfed at 88%, 88 games with 64% win rate. Then you had Blooded, Elucidian Starstriders doing much better in long format play, Commandos still doing really well, Galapox Infected, and then also Pathfinders, with Wormblade just kind of meandering just above. And then you actually have a lot less underperforming teams, which are just Novitiates, Felgor Ravagers, Vet Guard, Hunterclade, and Imperial Navy Breaches. Right, and then this is what it looks like when you've converted the data into bar chart form. So you get it's still fairly healthy overall. And then when you look at podium data for longer GT Plus events, basically Commandos again, with Blooded doing not so bad. Like it's still a bit more evenly spread. Like this is the data you're more concerned about, but it just shows like Chaos Cults and Commandos were doing really well. So now we come to August, and once again America having the most events again. Still some nice spread of countries overall, but 53 events with 19 total large events. So oddly, Hierotech Circle did really well. It was only 75 games, but they won like a 65% win rate. Then you had Chaos Cults with a more respectable 91 on 62%, and then Warp Coven still quite low at 58, and then Commandos like 270 games, 58%. Phobos Strike Team, Wormblade, all above 55, and Galapox, just okay. Then below 45%, you have Legionary, Halfkin Salvager, Corsair Voids Guard, Felgor Ravager, Kazakin, Pathfinders, and Farstalker Kinband. So overall, considering this was kind of like after the first big change to like Chaos Cults and Felgor, you can see Felgor still not doing so well, but Chaos Cults still overperforming, and this was after their first nerf, with Hierotech oddly doing well in August. When you look at the win rate compared to popularity, still quite evens out quite a bit, but Commandos are still hitting 58% with like the second highest usage rate, which is a really bad sign overall, because if they're like with such a high usage rate, they shouldn't be placing so high. It's really quite concerning. And then podiums makes it look even bleaker, with Commandos still having the most tournament wins and podiums and undefeated players. Like Chaos Cult go down a bit with number of podiums and undefeated players, showing they were winning more games but not as many tournaments, whereas Commandos have just been dominating the scene. Then when you look at GT Plus results, once again, Hierotech Circle still doing really well. Exaction Squad jump up to 60%. Chaos Cults go down a bit, and then Elucidae and Starstriders jump up again, showing they're maybe a better long tournament format team. And then Hunterclade doing a bit better with Commandos at 56%, and also technically Galapox. And then once again, we still have a lower average for 45% or less teams, which is Felgor, Pathfinder, Corsair, Kazakin, and Farstalker Kinband. So once again, repeating trends. And then this is just the data in bar chart form. And here's what the podium data looks like. Still very bad with compendiums, but not compendiums, with Commandos. But Phobos doing really well. Actually, they're doing quite well for August. Then for September, once again, America leading the way, but we've still got a good spread of global events with 53 events altogether and 25 total, slightly more from August. So overall, we have for September, Void Dancer Troop doing really well with a 63% win rate with 76 games. Then you have Blooded, 59. Commandos with 55% just. And then it looks like September evens out mostly, with the only underperforming teams being Halfkin Salvager, Kazakin, Farstalker Kimbad, and Exaction Squad, and then the new Strike Force Justian, which are doing really bad. But actually, it looked like September was a pretty much okay month. And then, as you can see, the spread remains kind of fair. It looks like most of like a very even month. And then when you look at podium data, once again, Commandos dominating the world with their podiums and undefeated runs. Whereas you look at the odd spike for Intercession Squad, who actually don't really, they get more podiums this month, but they have the second highest undefeated run, which is really good for a faction that has actually been not performing too well. Then when we look at GT Plus results, once again, it mirrors for Void Dance. The Troop Commandos actually do better in long format, and the only teams above 55% are Chaos Cults, Warp Coven Commandos, Blooded, and Void Dancer Troop. And then once again, we have a similarly narrow, low-performing teams, which are just Halfkin, Corsair, Exaction, Farstalker, and Strike Force Justian, which effectively has been quite consistent over the last few months. And then once again, this is just converted data. And then when we look at podium data for GT Plus results for September, it's just compendium. I'm not compendium, it's Commandos. I'm so sorry, compendium players. It's just Commandos. Like, their ridiculous dominance is just, it's a growing trend, which you will see. And it's just funny yet entirely depressing. So for October, we actually had a huge spike in events. So once again, America still leading the way, then Spain. Australia doing some nice number of events as well. So we had 85 total events with 35 large events, which are GT+. Chaos Cults, 61%. Really good. Commandos with even more games, like literally 342 games with a 57% win rate. Not good. And then underperforming teams, because we only had 2 overperforming teams for October. Underperforming teams, Exaction Squad barely, like you could argue they're 45%. But more seriously, Corsair, Void Guard, Halfkin, Hunterclade, and Pathfinders. So a bit of the shake-up there. Overall, everyone's doing much better. It's just Commandos and Chaos Cult spiking. And then here's it all spread out. So it looks actually pretty close. And one thing I've been noticing is far closer than we had in previous months. Then when you look at podium data, it's obviously Commandos leading the way. Legionary actually had a really good run in October. They had a lot of podiums, a lot of people placing 1 to 3, with a lot of undefeated players as well, which is really good. And Intercession maintaining their undefeated run with all their high player bases, still the most popular faction. But oddly, you can see Kazakin and Halfkin had a lot of undefeated players, as well as good numbers of podiums. So even though they had low win rates, they were actually doing fairly okay with people who could win with them. Then at our GT Plus results, it's just Chaos Cults, Commandos, and Hand of the Archon, interestingly, with higher than safe win rates. With Commandos, like over 200 games, crazy. Then we have a bit more of an expansion with the underperforming teams, where it looks more like previous months, with Farstalker, Kinban, Blooded, Exaction Squad, Corsair, Void Guard, Hunterclade, and Pathfinders. So overall, once again, that's just the data converted into bar charts. And then for podium data for October, once again, Commandos doing incredibly well, but you see it spike a bit more for Legionary. So Legionary did really well in GT Plus events, doing like the same amount of undefeated runs as Commandos with as many podium placements, which is really good. And then you can see Halfkin also doing really well despite their lower win rate. So then for November, this is kind of the down ticking month because this was like Worlds. But we had Spain taking back the lead for Spain for November, with 18 events and then 9 events for GT Plus. America down into second and Russia coming into third again. So overall, we had 66 events, which was actually, I think, a little bit more than last month, with 24 large events. For November win rates, we had Felgor with 72 games at 65%. So really high, but not the hugest amount of games. Chaos Cults, once again, remember, this is post-nerf Chaos Cults at 65. No, this is actually, ignore my thing about post-nerf. This is, we'll have to wait after that. It's like, this Chaos Cults get several nerfs. So this is where Chaos Cults did really well at Worlds, but 65% is actually above their average of 60%. Novitiates at 61%, which was interesting. Galapox at 59%. Wormblade at 56%. And then this was like the one of the few months where commandos don't have above 55% win rate. And then, very interestingly, below 45%, we only have Strikeforce, Justian, and Pathfinders. So quite interesting there. Overall, you have more swingy teams, but we have a widening range of just acceptable win rates. And as you can see a bit more with the bar graph data. Podium data, though, once again, Commandos and Legionary doing really well. Commandos, obviously. And once again, yeah, Legionary, they're still podiuming well. Their win rate has dropped down, but they're still in the healthy range. They haven't done so bad. Phobos, you know, they're still doing really well. And even Kazakin, with their not great win rate, actually getting a podium and going undefeated. So for our GT Plus results for November, we have Felgor at 65%, Galapox at 64%, Chaos Coats at 63%, Novitiates at 59%, Farstalk at Kinband at 57%, Commandos just at 55%, and this is where it's a bit more expansive with the underperforming teams, which are Halfkin, Warp Coven, Kazakin, Strikeforce, Justin, and Pathfinders. So Pathfinders really didn't like doing long formats. I think that might have been partly due to Worlds, but we'll see. But an interesting flip when it comes to GT Plus results for November. And as you can see, it kind of gets a bit more swingy when we look in bar chart form. And then for podium data, it gets very weird. So Commandos are still the top. Legionary also had a long number of undefeated players, along with Phobos and oddly Pathfinders. But still, Commandos had the most podiums. Chaos Coats only had one real big event win, which was just Worlds. They're just, at least for GT Plus events, they're dominating games, but not actually winning that many, which is interesting. So now we'll look at the Q3 2023 data. So this is basically all the data from June all the way up until the end of November, because it's like from the last balance day, it's like up to effectively end of November. So overall, there were 167 events with 66 large events. America leading the way with tons of events, then Spain and then Russia, with Australia and then the UK. Remember, this was before the world's balanced data slate. So Chaos Coats overall 59% win rate with 332 games. Blooded at 57 but only 188. Commandos with over 800 games, a 57% win rate. And then Warp Coven with only 200, 57%. Hand of the Archon 56 with 265. And then we have a pretty fair spread for kill teams within 55 to 45%. Those below 45 are Corsair, Halfkin, Kazakin, Pathfinders, Farstalker, Kinban, and Strikeforce Justian. And then here you can see the data in bar graph form. Notably, Strikeforce Justian, they're still in a weird spot where they came later in that quarter, but also they were harder to register. But you can still see the popularity of Commandos and Intercession. Podium data overall for Q3. You have Commandos on like 29 podiums with, I believe, 34 undefeated players compared to everyone else. They just kind of dominate the game, like ridiculously so. And even though Chaos Coats had a really high win rate, they're winning tons of games, but they only had about 6 podiums with 7 undefeated players. Like Phobos had a really good Q3 overall, with Hand of the Archon doing well as well, but it was clearly the Commando meta. This is the GT Plus result. So Chaos Coats take the lead here for GT Plus, then Warp Coven, Blooded, and then Commandos. Oddly, with Lucidity and Starstriders doing really well for Q3 for GT Plus. Underperforming, once again, it's not as many, with Halfkin Salvagers, Kazakin, Corsair, Farstalker, Kinban, and Strikeforce Justian. And here's what you see when you see the bar chart form. And then podiums for GT Plus, once again, Commandos dominating all long-form tournaments with 15 podiums and 17 undefeated players, whereas Chaos Coats have 5 podiums with 6 undefeated players, which is still very high, tied for second along with Phobos. But you can kind of see like Chaos Coats still doing really well, but it's just like the sheer dominance of Commandos is just kind of ridiculous. I don't think we've actually seen this level of dominance in Kill Team, especially for such a long period of time consistently. So here's where we get into the more recent data. So this is like halfway through where we got a balanced data slate change, where, you know, this is the post-world change, so we got some big nerfs and technically buffs. So for December 2023, we had the America leading the way for events, followed by Spain and then Russia. So 66 events, 22 large events, which is about average. It was picked up since like June. I don't know what's happening with Fast Talker Kinban, but with only 54 games, they had a 63% win rate, which is oddly really good for them. Void Dancer Troop at 64%. Felgor Ravagers at 62%, which is like midway buff. And then Blooded, Inquisitor Agents, Novitiates, Chaos Cults, all above 55%. And you may go, oh, Commandos, they're only at 52%. We'll see. And then below 45, we only have Hierotek Circle, Kazakin, and Halfkin Salvagers. So once again, this is kind of a weird month because remember, half of the month is with nerfs and half of the month is old changes, half of the month is new changes. So it's kind of a weird merge month, but we still actually have an even wider range of healthy teams, which is, to be fair, something we haven't had when I was last covering the stats. There was always a huge swing, but not so much anymore. This is all the data in bar chart form. And you can see Commandos did get a little less popular this month. Well, I mean, for December, whereas Legionary were actually quite popular. Well, the most popular faction, even more so than Intercession, which was a change. And then we get to podium data, where Commandos actually had the most, well, it's tied for second with Void Dancer Troop for the most podiums, with Legionary having the most undefeated players. Oddly, Vet Guard had the most podiums with like a respectable number of undefeated players. So that was the surprise from me because it's not really reflected in the win rate, which is why I love having the podium data. For GT Plus results, Felgor at near 70% win rate, Void Dancer Troop at 60%, Novitiates at 57%, Fast Talker Kinban at 57%, Blooded, Imperial Navy Breaches and Vet Guard at effectively 57%, and Cultists, Chaos Cults at 56%, with Galapox Infected and also Corsair Void Scarred. So below 45, we only have Hunterclade, Hierotek Circle, Phobos, and then Kazakin. Oddly, Strikeforce Justian not on here for December. And then for the December GT Plus, you can see it's actually a bit more even out. Felgor and Void Dancer Troop spiking more, but we actually have more of an even result here. GT Plus, Vet Guard doing really well, and Corsair having a long number of undefeated players. But when you look at GT Plus results for Commandos, they only have one undefeated player and one podium win. So they actually didn't do too well for December. But Halfkin had one podium with two undefeated players. So not too bad. It's a more quiet month. And now we're back up to date. So this is from January. This is a full month into the New Balance data slate. America taking the lead with 21 events, Spain with 19, and then Russia with 7. We had 82 events, which is our newest record yet so far, with 56 large events. And win rate wise, remember, Salvation was released in December. Felgor Ravagers, 216 games. A 62% win rate. Yeah, they needed that buff. Blades of Cain, 144 games with a 60% win rate. The team that really didn't do that well at LVO has somehow been dominating events. Void Dancer Troop with nearly 200 games that has 60% win rate. Crazy. Chaos Cults, even though they are less popular, with a 58% win rate. So remember, this is even after the nerfs. They're still doing incredibly well. Wormblade with a 57% win rate and 132 games. Then we had Orc Commandos with 438 games from Commandos with a 57% win rate. Like, really bad, guys. This is just a single month. And then you have Elucidine Starstriders with 117 games and a 56% win rate. So a very top-heavy month with the full balanced data slate changes into effect, which is always great to see. And then for underperforming teams, we just have Halfkin Salvagers, who are just out of the healthy range. Surprisingly, Scout Squad, although with only 100 games, but a 40% win rate, 42%, sorry. Imperial Navy Breach is really not doing well, down at 40%, or 41. Strikeforce Justian, not really surprising, at 37%, well, 38. And then you have Fast Talker Kinban with over 100 games and a 36% win rate. So, Crew really not enjoying their buff at all. And then when you look at it in bar chart form, you can see Commando's now the most popular faction. I think, yeah, they are more popular than Legionary and Intercession. We haven't had this in a long time where Commandos have been the most popular faction. I mean, I think they've finally broken the Intercession squad streak, which is very depressing. And you can see how it's a bit more swingy how we get to the top and bottom of the win rate bar charts. Then we got to podium data. So look, we had 13 undefeated, well, we had 13 Commando podiums with 14 undefeated players, which is lovely to see. Everyone else kind of mellowed out. I mean, second were Blades of Cain with 6 podiums, but not so many undefeated players. And then Chaos Coat still getting an event win with 2 undefeated players. But it's a really weird set of data. Like, well, I mean, not weird, it's just Commandos. Like, that's 400 games. Like, it's ridiculous. And then this is the GT Plus results. So these are, once again, events with 4 or more rounds and 16 or more players. So for 168 games, Felgor with 65%. I love to see it. Elucidine Starstriders, 59%. They're fine. Just ignore the Starstriders. Nothing. They're fine. Commandos with 322 games from GT Plus with a 59% win rate. It's crazy. Chaos Cults with 51 games from GT Plus with a 59%, which is also not good. Void Dancer Troop with 163 games and a 58% win rate. Galapox with 93 games with a 57% win rate, and then Wormblade at 56 just. And then once again, we have a narrow below 45%, which is from 300 games. Intercession Squad at 44%. Then you have Imperial Navy Breaches once again at 43, Strikeforce Justin at 41%, Scout Squad at 40%, and then Farstalker Kin Band at 37%. Once again at GT Plus, win rates even out a bit more, and you see there's slightly more popularity for elites at long format events, but Commandos just crazy. Podium data. For GT Plus, we have 10 podiums for Commandos with 10 undefeated players. Then you have Pathfinders, oddly with 5 undefeated players, but 3 podiums, so pretty good. Chaos Cults consistently winning 1 event, well, podiuming 1 with 1 undefeated player, and then oddly you have Intercession Squad with several undefeated players. I wonder who one of those 2 players are. Maybe they are LVO, who knows? But some really weird swingy data. So, well, not swingy, weird data. Like, so I'll cover it here. I'll cover it in the overview. But remember, this is where LVO. So LVO was kind of a weird reflection of the stats. So Blades of Cain did horribly at LVO. Like, Blades of Cain got smashed. But it seems outside of LVO, they dominated. And it's weird. Like, you had weird reflections. Like, what you saw at LVO wasn't really reflected in the stats. Like, Kazakin did amazingly well at LVO, but they didn't do that well overall, which is quite strange when you think about it. So, those were all the stats. That's like 7 months of stats. I am tired. This video is going to be very long, but for the overview, well, Commandos doing their thing. As I said, I tried to keep like balance changes outside of the stats. I saved that for other videos and stuff, but it really has to be underlined. Commandos have effectively been dominating the meta, the game, whether it comes from popularity, win rate, podiums, or event wins, for like 7 months straight. I don't think we've ever seen that before in Kill Team, and this is after being nerfed. Like, this is kind of ridiculous. The sheer number of games and how consistently well this team is doing is quite concerning. Literally, for January, they had over 300 games, like 400 games. It's crazy, and they're still doing so well. They clearly dominated the game. And when you look at balanced data slate changes, it looks like Felgor didn't need that buff. We'll see. Remember, it's only 1 full month, but they've like literally wrecked the meta with their changes. Maybe due to LVO, but we'll see. LVO didn't actually fully reflect the stats, as I covered in the January stats section. And then we had Chaos Cults doing consistently well, like even after all their nerfs. Like, they had 2 sets of nerfs and still dominated the meta. So hopefully, you know, maybe we'll push for a 3rd. We'll see. But overall, like, what I'd like to focus on with the stats, we saw like interesting trends, like Elucidine Starstriders only being better at long format events. So Starstriders doing really well at GT Plus events, so events with 4 or more rounds and 16 or more players, showing they actually might be better as a long format team. And then we've actually seen a widening range of teams with a 55% to 45% win rate, which is actually really good. And when you look at a lot of months, while we still have a lot of teams that made like 5 or around 5 teams that are above 55%, we actually have had months where there's only about 3 teams under 45%, which is really good. We actually haven't seen that in a long time for Kill Team. And another thing I'd like to add is this is 7 months of data without people being able to actively read the stats. Because one of the big criticisms people threw at the stats was like, oh, the stats are not everything, and I never say they are, but people are just going off of the stats to alter like the game and stuff. People will rein themselves in. So this is 7 months of unbridled data with no input from me or affection. Like, it's just kind of people doing their own thing in ignorance of the general stats and how tournaments are going. You're just going off of what people are reading, you know, like, oh, who won this event and stuff. So overall, it's been generally quite good for the health of the game. We can see like Imperial Navy Breaches oddly not doing well, Kazakin seemingly not doing well with their buff. Elites have not done great at all. They're becoming less popular. Their win rates are actually dropping, like especially Intercession. They're starting to underperform, especially with the January results, you know, even with a huge player base. Legionary are kind of just holding in there just due to sheer determination, as people like, are probably still the only commando counter. Yeah, we've basically, if you were trying to gain a trend from the stats, Commandos and Chaos Cults doing way too well. Handed Archon occasionally peaks but then flips back down. Eliciting Star Striders way better at GT Plus results, including Galapox. Galapox did kind of the same thing. Felgor, even when they were mid-nerf, they had months where they spiked, which is quite concerning because that's when they were like considered bad. And now post-buff, they've had 2 months of 60%, like above 60%. So we've got some interesting trends where the melee teams are still effectively dominating the game. Commandos have dominated the meta like for forever. And like maybe some of the buffs either weren't enough or weren't as worrying as we thought. Like Pathfinders, they haven't done crazy with the buffs, even though they don't need that recon drone. And Kazakin kind of haven't done too well. Although, as I said, at LVO, Kazakin, they placed in the top 8. And they wrecked so many elite players. Like the problem we had at LVO, once an elite player lost a game and they dropped into the meta where they were just like down in the pool with all the Kazakin players and they just drowned to Kazakin. So as I said, even though the Kazakin win rate isn't that good, they're still a menace, which is worrying. But as I say, with all the stats, they're not the be-all and end-all. They're just a good guidance and read of the meta in an impartial way. You know, we still don't have like the wide number of games that we would like to see, but we're seeing month on month more games, more tournaments, more countries coming into the world, well, coming into the game of Kill Team to host events, which is great to see. We're seeing like just growth overall, which is really good, especially as, you know, you get a lot of negative people, but it's great. That's what I like about the stats. It helps show, you know, they're not right, really. And, you know, now I've got back to podium data. We can kind of balance it out with the win rates. Because as you can see, there were some months where Commandos were just okay with the win rate. But they literally dominated the tournament scene with wins and undefeated players and podiums. So hopefully now we've got a more holistic view of the data that can balance it all out. And hopefully it makes more sense to you. We'll refine it as we go on. Like we'll try and like put number of white tournament wins by a faction. We'll maybe go back to like the matchup matrix, but also have an article version of this where you'll be able to like see all the images individually if you prefer instead, but that'll be in the episode description. But as always, big thanks goes to my new stat man, Smiles, Lies, Gunfire, and obviously thanks to HotSauceTeddy, who literally none of this would be possible. And he has my eternal gratitude and thanks. But that's pretty much it for me today. So please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of the stats show. Do you like that the stats is back? Are you as happy as me? And remember, like, what would you like to see added? Let me know. I'd be interested to hear your feedback. You know, what do you think of the meta we have at the moment? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description for free below, as well as an affiliate link at Element Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support, and I'll quickly shout out my patrons. So for my adepts of the crit, I have Tom, Sam, Nikki Sticks, Nick, Mr. Meatwad, Kenzie, John Thomas, Graham, David, Dad of Goldens, Ben, and for my veterans of the crit, I have Sandra. Thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. But yeah, I'm like, as you could have told, apologies, I am quite sick. I'm better, but not in a good spot. I think it's a mix of the smoke from the Rio and people coughing who were sick on my plane back, which is very frustrating. I'm feeling better, still sick. Hopefully it doesn't come up too much in the video. My throat stopped hurting mostly, it's just pain. But I'm really happy to have the stats back. We should be back monthly. I've waited to update it all together, so then we'll do the February data, and then when with February we'll probably do another Q4 data, because that's when we can go, Games Workshop will probably look at the data for January to February to then balance the game, because now everyone can see the win rates, so we can now actually have a more balanced look at how the game can be changed, which is I'm really excited about. But overall it's really interesting. Like what I like that I saw in the data is like there are teams that actually do better in long format play compared to like 3-round tournaments, which is stuff we weren't seen for a while. And overall, despite like the dominance of Commandos, Chaos Cult, and Felgor, we've had a pretty stable meta with a very nice wide range of healthy win rates and just more people and countries playing, which is what I really like to see. But yeah, remember, until next time, no matter what the stats say, there's always a chance to win as long as you can roll a crit.